Welcome to Food Travel Talk TV, a monthly talk show brought to you by the World Food Travel Association, the world's leading authority on food and beverage tourism. Food Travel Talk was created by and for the world's culinary travel trade. Its goal is to inspire us all with ways to help us do business better. Each month, we invite industry thought leaders, opinion makers, and trendsetters to discuss important topics for our industry's benefit. My name is Jane Conley, and I'll be your host today for our December 2020 episode. This month's topic is Bloggers and Tourism Boards, New Possibilities for Food Tourism in 2021. And I'd like to introduce our guest speakers. Kacie Morgan, writer and editor of the Rare Welsh Bit blog. She started her blog in 2010 to document her love of food and travel. Since then, she has been featured by the likes of Food 52, BBC Radio Wales, World Travel Market, Co-op Food Mag, and Sainsbury's Mag and Metro. And we have Sally Prosser, writer and editor of My Custard Pie blog. From the UK, she has lived in the Middle East since 1995. She believes that all good food and travel starts with a great story. Finding more about our food, who makes it, where it comes from, and why is what makes her tick. She has been featured in The National, The Independent, and won several blogger awards. Any handouts, links, and polls shared in the live session are for live guests only. If you are watching this recording after the air date, we're sorry, but you will not be able to access those materials. Feel free to post your questions at any time in the chat window. We will reserve the last 20 minutes or so for our guests to answer your questions. Now I'd like to set the tone for today's episode. We know that cross-sector collaboration is vital for destination development strategies, and it has shown to be highly successful, especially in food and travel. Larger institutions now have the opportunity to reach new and highly engaged audiences they might not have been able to before. This is made possible through partnerships and collaborations with food travel writers, bloggers, and influencers. Today, we will discuss the ins and outs and the advantages and challenges of these types of opportunities. So let's get started with our first question. What do you believe are the most valuable strengths of food and travel bloggers for the food and beverage tourism sector? Kacie.
Hello, good to be on here tonight. So I think one of the strongest advantages of using bloggers within the food and beverage tourism sector is being able to tell more authentic stories. So for example, when a blogger or a content creator visits a destination, they can tell a story while they're there by immersing themselves in the local cuisine, whether it's doing cookery classes or perhaps exploring the local street food offering. And then when they get home, they can then continue that kind of journey of culinary exploration and creating recipes that have perhaps been inspired by what they've experienced on their travels. So I think it can provide an opportunity for more ongoing coverage rather than kind of just one-off features, perhaps in magazines or websites, and coverage that kind of appeals to a very loyal and targeted audience as well.
Yeah, I agree with Kacie on that, about the in-depth coverage and really getting under the skin of a place. But one of the major strengths, I think, is trust. People follow people because they trust them, especially when people are genuinely influencers. And we're not talking about people who just, put a like and a tick. The people who you build a community with. So they will trust your opinion. So it's almost like a friend is recommending those things to you. And so you will take that very seriously or take it on board. And obviously we want them to act on it as well. So I think that's the strength.
Sure, sure. It's a personal connection.
Yeah, definitely.
And would you say that these relationships are long-term, long-lasting relationships with your audience?
I think it depends on the person and the influencer and their audience. I think it is. I think too often people look at influencers, bloggers, etc., and they put them under the same mantle. But I think there you have to look at each individual, like you would with traditional media. But obviously you have to dig deeper and get to know them first, and then see if it's the right partnership for you. Rather than just the influencer, looking at their audience and how they engage. But yes, it generally you do build up an in-depth and long-term relationship with it's a community. It's not just one way, it's two ways.
Right. Great. Kind of touching on that, what do you think bloggers can do for destinations, tourism boards that other types of media and marketing cannot?
So
do you want to get back?
Sorry.
Sorry.
Just coming back to what Sally was saying then, I totally agree with how we build trust in our communities, and the people who follow us really trust our opinions and our recommendations are often followed. So I'd say that's a really big plus point in comparison to other forms of media, as well as the fact that people might only pick up a newspaper or a magazine once, but they return to a blog again and again. And bloggers can find so many different ways to portray their content, whereas a journalist perhaps working for a particular editor might have a certain angle that they have to take and certain things that they have to cover and that they're not allowed to cover as well. So I think it provides a more kind of genuine and all-encompassing kind of view, really.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. As a consumer of media, I love reading a beautifully written piece about a destination, but often it's the entertainment factor. I'm not sure I'd ever want to go there, and it's definitely not a guide to going. It's definitely an overview, and you're aware that there are some preconceptions or something, some influences that shaped that content. Yeah.
Would you say that bloggers, essentially you have more flexibility to do maybe what you feel like is right for your audience rather than being tied to some set or strict structure?
Can I answer this one? Because I have quite strong feelings about this. That should be the case. I think we know our audience so well, and it isn't like a publication where very much it's the demographics, etc. It's quite remote, and we know we're the expert. Casey's the expert on her audience. I'm the expert on my audience. We know exactly what will resonate with them. But often you go on a media trip, and perhaps it's from the past. You're treated a bit like journalists in the past, and given you must do this, and this, without that true collaboration to produce the content that will really work. If you go with someone who does make that a collaboration, that asks you before you go, especially right, this is the planned itinerary, what do you think, or tailors it to what you think will resonate, it works much better. I also think, and I'm going to put this in, it's a bit out of step, it's a sideline, giving influencers and bloggers enough time, because it's not like journalism. A journalist will go and research and then go back and write, and often have a photographer with them. We're creating content as we go. So, you're filming, you're writing, you're taking down all the information, and then you'll get back to your hotel room after a 9-hour schedule, and then you'll be posting all your stories, etc. And really genuinely giving some time so that you can produce really good content, not just afterwards, but at the time. I think is definitely worth, if you're investing in taking someone to a destination, it's definitely worth adding on another day, and then you can have a few more hours in a day to create that content.
Sure. Kacie?
Yeah, I think touching again on what Sally was saying about time, I know I've been on lots of press trips. I've been on a few, only one or two with journalists, and it is quite funny. There is a bit of a divide between us and how we operate. And I think one of the advantages of working with bloggers as well is that you can get these different forms of content, but then you need to give them more time to capture content and perhaps more time to take more pictures, which are often provided, like stock photos, for example, for a lot of journalists. I know some do take their own photos, but yeah, we definitely need more time and perhaps less busier schedules in order to really capture the content that we really need to get, rather than having to rush when we're on these trips. Yeah.
Do you feel like the content that bloggers are capturing on those types of trips are different in any way from the content or the views that journalists are taking away from the same trips?
I think sometimes, yeah, the blogger might have perhaps more of a niche interest in a particular area. They might focus on something. I know a lot of the journalists I've been on trips with have told me that they intended to write more of what seemed to be an overview, and they often have tight word counts and can't fit in writing about perhaps every single place we visited, or perhaps even all of their favourite places. It'll come down to what's most relevant for their particular angle. So, yeah, I know we can provide video, and often we're asked to provide photography and video, on a paid basis on the back of these trips, which is something that the journalists wouldn't provide directly to the tourism board.
Yeah, that's true. I think you can be a bit more honest. It doesn't all have to be absolutely beautiful. I mean, you might want to put that on your Instagram feed. But if you're going around a street market and tasting food, etc., it's under terrible lighting. It may not look great, but you're capturing that atmosphere, and you'd never get a journalist, taking a proper photo of that or really capture that atmosphere,
Yeah, that content, even if it's not the perfect photo or the perfect video, it's coming from you. It's in your brand for your audience. So
absolutely.
It has enormous value, even if it's not the most beautiful photo around. Okay, that makes sense. So could either of you give an example and kind of go into detail of a collaboration you have done with a tourism board in the past?
Sure, I'd be happy to talk about a collaboration that I did with Grenada Tourism Authority, or with Discover Grenada. So I first got in contact with Discover Grenada back in 2017, and I was interested in finding out more about the chocolate festival because I'd been featuring a lot of chocolate content on my blog at the time, and was also interested in travelling throughout more of the Caribbean, having spent some time in Jamaica. So I reached out to them with a pitch, and then eventually they invited me to cover the chocolate festival on a press trip in spring 2018. So that was a 5-day trip where they covered all my flights, accommodation and expenses.
Right. From the UK. There.
Yeah, from the UK. And so in exchange for that, I provided a series of blog posts and social media coverage from the destination. So heavily Instagram based, stories, Facebook and Twitter perhaps every other day. And then when I get back, then I write the blog post set. And so the blog posts were really well received. The tourism board were really happy, in particular with the Instagram stories and just the creative aspect of them, different elements that I picked to focus on within the content, really, that they weren't expecting. And so I went on then to win the Blogger of the Year award for that year. So that was just in recognition of the coverage that I produced, how well it had performed, and just how I'd interpreted the different experiences we had on the trip. But following on from that, I think the collab I did with them is a really good example of how a tourism board can develop a long-term relationship with a blogger. So rather than just inviting them on one trip, I think because we kind of targeted each other so well, they were a really good fit for me, and I was a good fit for them. And so last year I actually ended up spending quite a lot of my own money going back to Grenada just to spend more time there on my own kind of free time and explore it more, doing what I wanted to do. And I've then produced content as well off the back of that. So I think it's just a great example of how, if you target the right bloggers, you can develop long-term relationships.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Sally, do you have any past collaboration?
Yeah, the one I'd like to talk about is the most recent, obviously before COVID, actually probably this time last year, I'd just come back from Taiwan, and I was invited by the Taiwanese Tourist Board to go. And like so many people, I just thought, oh, made in Taiwan. I knew nothing about the country. And that is, that is in common with most people, I would say, and so, yes, we went for, was it 5 or 6 days? We were split into 2 groups, so 2 couples, and me and another girl, we were both really interested in food. So they tailored our bit of the trip really around food focused. But the country was absolutely wonderful. We had the opportunity to really dive in deeply, go to markets, street markets, as well as seeing many of the sites, to the tea plantations. So it's really a wonderful country. And yeah, that was a collaboration that they really understood what we wanted to go and see rather than presenting things to us.
Okay.
So I think it got the best out of us content-wise. And I've just had great feedback from everyone just saying, gosh, I never knew Taiwan was like that, because, I didn't know. Everyone's so surprised. And as soon as COVID is lifted and people can travel again, I know that people will, it's on their radar and they will do it.
So what were some of the main deliverables from that work with them? What did you deliver to the tourism?
So what did I deliver? I delivered Instagram and Instagram stories on the trip as well as afterwards.
In live time.
Live, okay. And as I say, every night, and morning, catching up with stories. So really covering the trip as it went along, for sure, and a blog post as well. Yeah, that's deliverables. But it is that. It was a lot of content. That just sounds, oh yeah, a bit of Instagram, but it wasn't. It was. When I look back on the coverage, it was huge. And then, I've put it in my highlights, and then the tourism board can use that content as well. And I think that's another part of it, is using content generated by other people that often your partners actually don't make as much use of as they could do. And I think that's something to be mindful of, that they could actually get a better result if they shared that content. Hashtag is a great one. Often that wasn't with Taiwan, but with other projects, I've been given a hashtag and immediately I'll look at it on, say, Instagram, and they've chosen a hashtag which is already used. So if you look on the content, it's got nothing to do with the person or the company, or anything that you provide will be lost. So it shows that the hashtags aren't understood. Or if it is a very specific hashtag that everyone on that project uses, I don't think the people who are running it ever look at that hashtag or monitor the content so that if anyone else is using it, they're not highlighted. That's just one small aspect of really understanding social content and online content. And again, you can ask the people you're working with, like you did just before we had this conversation. You said, is there anything, you would like to contribute to this? I think that that could happen much more, actually. Sure. The open transparency. Yeah, definitely. For both parties, that it works. It strengthens your content, and it works better for the partners.
Right. So what I'm understanding is that really influencers, bloggers, they act as a bridge between people maybe who have never been to the destination and the destination, right? You're connecting people maybe that have never been in the same room. You're bringing people together. Yeah, or changing people's opinions. Obviously, I've been based in Dubai for a long time.
and people, I mean, through Dubai's own promotion, when you think of Dubai, I'm sure you think of tall buildings and quite flashy, etc. But they now are looking at trying to present the other side of Dubai, and people are really surprised when they see that there's more to the country, more to the Emirate. So yeah, you know, it's tailoring that content as well.
Sure.
What do you think, Kacie?
Yeah, no, I'd say so. Yeah, tailoring. I think most of the people who read my blogs usually haven't been to the destination before, but then I do have people who are just really passionate about food and particular destinations and cuisines who just love to keep coming back visiting. And I think at the moment it's providing a really nice way of kind of traveling while we can't travel as well. So
Sure.
yeah, even if
So when we're
before, yeah.
when we're talking about these collaborations, how can tourism boards or other larger institutions identify that correct blogger? Like you said, there are many different kinds of bloggers and influencers within that umbrella. So how can these larger institutions identify the correct person to work with?
I would probably advise, you know, once you've identified which bloggers are available to work with in terms of who would appeal to your target market and in your specific niche, I would spend time really following them and observing what they're posting, how often they're posting, and what kind of engagement are they receiving. And we're not just looking for the bloggers with hundreds of thousands of followers who are getting thousands of likes on every single picture. But to actually delve a little bit deeper into that engagement and have a look at who are the comments coming from. Are they varied? Are they coming from authentic accounts? Are the comments meaningful? Because if the comments are coming from exactly the same accounts all the time, then it could be it's not definite, but it could be a sign of some kind of pod behavior. I mean, we all know there are means of influencers gaining, you know, artificial engagement and following. So I think looking at who is posting and who is commenting and making sure that the community they're engaging with is authentic.
Okay.
And a website that I often refer to is socialblade.co.uk, and that gives you an overview of kind of how many followers somebody has gained over time and whether there have been any kind of suspicious sharp spikes in followings. Which can be a giveaway that a following may not be 100% authentic. And I know Sally has some really interesting viewpoints on this as well. So I really enjoyed reading her blog post about it, which touched on this. So.
Perfect. Thank you. Sally?
Yeah, I agree with that. It is getting to know the people that you're thinking of working with. I mean, yes, it's a huge amount of people to research, and there are agencies who recommend people as well, but yeah, I think it is that match of audiences. And you know, as Kacie says, it's not the hundreds of thousands. I think you've got to have people who are able to act on it, not just to say, oh, I love where you've gone, you know, what beautiful beach, I want to be there. If they're not the type of person who's actually got the funds or the motivation to actually go to that place, and if you are investing in someone to go, actually you'll get your investment back if only one or two people actually book to go to that destination, won't you? You know, and it is quite a big ask, but if you've got those people who really trust you and have the background to act on it, then that's going to work for you, rather than people who just like looking at the beaches and dreaming that they could be there in the Maldives, but are very unlikely to ever have the funds or the means to get there. Sorry, that's a bit blunt, but it's, you know, that's how it is.
So I wonder how bloggers, in a way, you need to prove the quality of your audience. So is there a way that you can prove this to potential partners?
I mean, it's what Kacie just said is really, you know, it's not just a numbers game. It is, you can tell from content, and you know, if you ask someone, they could prove it. You know, I went to Vaux in Switzerland for a trip, and two people wrote to me and said, I never knew that region was so beautiful. We're going to spend next summer there. You know,
Right.
That's proof, isn't it?
Sure.
Yeah, for me, I think the quality of your content, like content is king, as they always say, and I think the quality of your content will speak volumes, and that's why I try to never take a quick picture, even if it's just something that, I haven't even been sponsored to do and I'm doing myself, because I wouldn't want to post something that I wouldn't be happy to get paid to post. I wouldn't want to be known for bad content, and I think consistently good content is the best sign, I think, of good quality. But as well as that, I also ask the brands and tourism boards I work with for testimonials if they're happy with the work that they've done with me, that I can share on my website. And I've had that has been really helpful for people that I've worked with too.
Great.
That's a good tip.
Sure. So talking about deliverables again, of what you can offer destinations, you talked about social media. So hi, Instagram content, stories, posts, some blog posts, but does it ever go beyond that? Is there ever conversations of feedback in terms of maybe advice of what the destination could be doing better or what they're doing good at? Is there anything beyond just the content that you're creating for your blog and social media?
Yeah, in the past, I've given tourism boards feedback on what they could include, perhaps for local tour operators running kind of package holidays. What aspects of the trip I thought would be most relevant for them to include, and similarly, I've given feedback on what future quest trips should include. I've given advice on, like, tourism boards who I've developed strong relationships with. I often advise them on who they could choose to take on their quest trips, or recommend bloggers that would produce content that would be a good fit for their target audience. So I'd say there's definitely scope to work with bloggers in other ways, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and more of a strategic mindset for the destination.
Yeah, it's definitely, there's potential. I don't know how much is picked up on that. Yeah. And also you could create content for their channels as well, take over their social media, or write things for their publications, etc. Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, yes, the Georgian agency, I'm just thinking that Georgian Wine Agency asked to use one of my blog posts because they've been asked for an article for a print piece in a newspaper. So can we use it? I said, yeah, no problem. But, there is potential to translate that content into other channels.
Okay. Kacie?
So I was just going to say, no, I'm sorry, it's just totally flipped. I don't know what that was.
That's my neighbor.
It floated out of my mind, I'm sorry. I'll let you know if I think of it again.
Great. Sorry for the noise. My neighbor deciding to do some construction right now. Anyway, so I'll ask another question. I'll mute my mic. Would you say that food and travel bloggers have a unique insight into specific target markets? Could you expand on that a bit?
I think we do have a really good, sorry, I think it's a bit of
Go on, Kacie.
I think we're very in touch with different target markets, who our target markets are, and I think we're really in touch with what makes them tick and what will or won't work for a destination when it comes to their perhaps food and beverage offering. So yeah, and I think as well, being so well connected, just reading through the notes that I've written here. Yeah, I think as we kind of devote our lives and kind of our careers to food and travel, we have a really good understanding of what represents, good cuisine or a good culinary experience that can make somebody, want to visit a destination again or explore visiting a destination for a first time. So I'd say that we do have quite a unique insight in comparison to perhaps journalists or other forms of media that aren't focused specifically on food and travel.
Yeah, I think we all share what makes us tick, and the things that make you personally tick. There are other people who think along the same lines as you. It's quite focused. I think that's the difference. And so you're close to that, because it's very personal.
Right. Great. Next question. So this is a good question that I'm very curious about. Is there any opportunity for food tour operators to work with bloggers, influencers? What would that look like? Kacie.
I'd say there's definitely lots of opportunities to do it. What I would say is that you'll probably find that a blogger, I mean, if a food tour operator was to reach out to me and ask me, did I want to work with them? More often than not, the answer would be yes. But then the problem would be cost. Who is going to cover the flights? Who is going to cover my expenses in getting there? And so often I can understand most food tour operators might not have the budget to pay for flights. And so I think what I would advise is perhaps reaching out to bloggers who have written about the destination that you're based in and who've shown a passion about it before and who are likely to go there again, or to want to, if you've already visited the destination, you've already covered the flights, then, there's nothing to stop you going ahead and working with a food tour operator. But if they've not got a budget, then it might be difficult unless they're happy to kind of pay for the flights. And I think it's probably a good place to start is for the tour operators to contact local tourism boards and ask if they know of any bloggers who are due to be visiting or shown an interest in the destination or the region. It'd be quite a good place to start, I think.
Yeah, I agree with. Sorry. I agree with everything you just said. I think usually food tours, I mean, if somebody offers me a food tour, I will jump on it. It's a fantastic way to get to know a country, really in depth and all sorts of hidden corners, etc. I've been on so many wonderful ones. It's the first thing I'll do. If I visit a destination, I'll book a food tour. But they are small companies, it's very hard even to offer free food tours, it cuts into their margins. So I think, working with tourism boards who can hopefully cover some of their costs, or as you say, Kacie, make the most of people who are actually visiting the destination and channel them that way, is a good idea. Or working in conjunction with projects that are happening. Really good friends of mine, I'm going to give them a plug because they're fantastic. Frying Pan Adventures in Dubai are an amazing food tour company. And for instance, they did a collaboration with the Dubai Literature Festival. So they did something where they took authors on food tours. So while they were there, famous authors got to see another side of Dubai. And obviously that was funded by the festival, there was some collaboration going on there, but it was a completely different market, completely different way to use, to see the country. So, yeah.
Yeah, so there's opportunities there, but maybe the biggest challenge is the budgeting in that kind of collaboration.
Yeah.
So talking about challenges, what kinds of challenges do bloggers face when doing these sort of partnerships, collaborations with businesses or larger organizations? Kacie?
Sorry, I was just unmuting my mic. So I'd say besides budgeting, another potential kind of obstacle for lots of bloggers who aren't blogging full-time and are perhaps running their blog alongside a full or part-time job would be time. So traditionally, press trips that I've been invited on are often very last minute and quite short notice. And so I think I've been full-time on my blog now for 3 years, but prior to that, I found it very difficult to get time off work. And, there was always a tension between my blog and kind of my full-time job until I began to blog full-time. It's difficult to get time off work and often to just write to an employer last minute while you're doing that. So I think you do need to work with bloggers to make sure that you can set dates that are convenient for them. And for some, that might mean planning a little bit further in advance. I know that the pandemic is going to present new obstacles for tourism boards looking to work with bloggers or for tour operators looking to work with bloggers. And perhaps we might see some more individual trips going on versus the group trips that we've seen in the past. But I think that has potential to lead to some really good individual authentic coverage as well, and to tell some really kind of intimate stories. definitely, yeah.
Yeah, that I agree with Kacie there. And just harking back to what we said before, I think being given a schedule at the last minute and you're looking on the schedule and thinking, there is, you're going from one thing to another to another. You haven't got time to cover it properly and you get back at the end of the day and you're exhausted and they wake you up at 6 the next day. It's not complaining as in it's too much hard work, but it just doesn't get the best out of you, and or you've got stuff in the schedule that just is not of interest to you or your audience because the tour operators or the body has not consulted you. I've seen high up bloggers thinking, well, what am I going to do here then, because it's just not what their audience is interested in.
Right.
That's really the challenge. I don't know, being given a tour of a hotel, every single bedroom, that has happened to me. I'm thinking, there's so much more I could be doing here. I don't want to see another bed, I know that sounds very basic, but it does happen. So it really is tailoring the schedule so that both parties are happy and getting the best out of the content, and the time.
Sure, that makes sense. And talking about COVID, the pandemic, looking to the future now, Kacie, you mentioned that you might be predicting more one-on-one individual trips. How do you think bloggers could uniquely contribute to the recovery plan of a destination? Sally?
Oh, gosh. I want Kacie to answer that. That's a tricky one, isn't it? I can't. Yeah.
Throughout the pandemic, it's been really lovely to see bloggers and tourism boards coming up with innovative ways of working together. And I think within food travel, cookery classes are a really great example of that and how we can travel by plate. I'm actually going to be doing one tonight with Latvian tourism. So I'm really excited.
Amazing.
I'm actually writing about that on my blog as well, and doing some really nice food photos in some daylight photography as well. So yeah, I think that's a really nice example of how we can actually work together even from afar and destinations at the forefront of people's minds. And I think it's just that kind of keeping in touch and doing what we can, getting involved perhaps in campaigns or sharing our travel memories from trips that we've been on before to inspire others to, keep the hope that we will be able to travel again. Hopefully.
I guess I was thinking actually when visiting, so I was flawed a bit, but you were absolutely right. I participated during lockdown in the Singapore Food Festival, and they got chefs to be interviewed by people all over the world. I did a live interview with someone there, and it really brought the whole festival to life, and it was excellent. And I think you're right about the cookery courses, etc., and bringing that audience from afar. Yeah. And I love Latvia, by the way. You have a great time.
That's on my bucket list.
Again, that was somewhere that I went, and it just wasn't on my radar or my audience, and I would recommend wholeheartedly after going. So yeah.
Great. All right, so now we're going to switch over to the Q&A. We have some questions here in the chat box, so I'm going to start from the top. The first one, how and in what ways can internet bloggers and influencers help the global industry recover faster and better from this pandemic? Well, we just answered that, so good job.
Well, generosity. I think, it's in all our interests for it to recover. So yes, if we can club together as a community on each side, as you say, Kacie, looking back at memories, keep promoting the destinations. I think that's a very good call.
Anything to add, Kacie?
No, I don't think anything else to add there, to be honest, no.
Okay, next. What do you know now that you wish you knew back when you first started out blogging?
That would be SEO and how to optimize my blog posts for the keywords that people are searching for, that the target audience is searching for, so that they actually rank on Google and actually get views. So yeah, I didn't do that for the first few years of blogging, and since I've started doing that, unsurprisingly, my traffic has rocketed, and I know how to get my posts to rank now, which is just great. So yeah, that's the biggie for me.
Great. Sally?
Yeah, I think because I set my blog up 10 years ago as well, Kacie, before there was a word influencer, and it was just because I was passionate about what I'm writing about still. And I think it is that I would just say, don't get distracted, really be true to yourself, and focus on the things that you are really interested in. Don't get your head turned by things that sound fascinating, but really you wouldn't have got, if it had been you saying, what do I want to do, you wouldn't have done that thing, even though it sounds quite nice at the time.
Right.
Yeah. And how many nice people that you would meet. No, seriously. Food, it makes a great community, honestly.
That's true.
It's true.
Next question. Which internet influencers and bloggers, if any, do you follow? Kacie?
So one of my favourite bloggers and writers is Karen Burns-Booth from Lavender and Lovage. I absolutely love her recipes and her Instagram. It's just, you can tell she's put a lot of hard work into her content, and she's got a lot of experience in what she does. And she moved to Wales a few years ago, and I've really enjoyed her putting her own takes on Welsh recipes as well, that I've enjoyed eating over the years. So I really love following Karen. In terms of travel, I follow Binny's Food and Travel quite often, Suzanne from the Travel Bunny. It's just a few off the top of my head. Yeah, but there's so many, and I've got so many friends within the travel blogging community. It's a nice, supportive community to be a part of.
Yeah, my mind's gone blank because I follow so many wonderful people who do such brilliant content, and I vouch for the people that you've mentioned, Kacie. Voyager Chic, I'm going to give a shout out to, who's just had a baby, but her content is fantastic, and people completely hang off her every word, and I'm not surprised because she's very.
Oh, did we lose Jane?
We've lost Jane.
Right, we can continue talking.
I want to pick my phone up and look who I follow now, and it's switched off for this.
Oh, there we are, back.
Jane, you disappeared.
All right, sorry about that. I'm back. All right, next question. What do you do when your travel costs are sponsored and you do not have a positive experience? Are you completely free to write what you want about your experience? Sally?
Do you? I mean, I tend to omit things. I'm trying to think if I really had terrible experiences. No, it just tends to be that, that perhaps it's not the sort of content that you wanted to cover. But yeah, I think I'd just omit things rather than say, especially about destinations, because it's not like you go to a restaurant and you have a bad meal. That's very focused. If you're going to a country and you go to one place that's not very nice, or you've had a bad experience, in the scheme of things, it could be different the next day. So I don't think that's useful at all. I definitely wouldn't big up something that I didn't like, that I thought, I wouldn't, even though it may be quite famous, I don't know. Yeah, you put me on the spot there.
That's a hard question.
Yeah, no, I think I'll be honest in giving an objective opinion, and again, everyone has their own, what I might think, oh God, I'd never want to do this. Someone else might think, oh yeah, that's brilliant. So it just depends on you personally. So I think I'd say my personal opinion, but without criticizing the place, for instance. Yeah.
Okay.
How about you, Kacie?
Yeah, for me on my blog, I like to feature destinations that I'm happy to be positive about. So if I did have a really 100% negative experience in a destination, I think I probably wouldn't want to share it with my readers. So I'd explain the situation to the tourism board or the PR who's handling the trip. And I'd explain that if they wanted me to write about it, I'd have to be objective and I'd ask them kind of what they feel about that. However, that said, I've been on trips where I've not been impressed with aspects of a trip, perhaps certain outings that we did or perhaps certain meals we had. But I've never been on a trip where there's been nothing about the trip that I'd want to write about in a positive sense at all.
Okay.
As long as you've done the legwork to set up the collaboration in a good way and done your research about who you're working with, and the blogger also takes the time to check the schedule and make sure that they're happy they can produce content from that, that shouldn't really happen, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Setting things up beforehand, so there's not really much of a possibility. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, the next one. How hard is it for you during this COVID pandemic as a blogger and influencer? Do you plan on adding more to your communication pattern with changes in travelers' expectations?
I've been quite lucky because I've got the heavy focus on food as well. So although I have noticed a decline in people searching for travel on my blog, and my travel posts are performing a little, well, you know, not as good as they normally would, my recipe content is doing better than ever. And I think one thing that the pandemic has done is it's taught everybody how to cook from scratch.
Yes.
Our love of food. So I seem to be getting more recipe work this year than I ever have in any other year, which is great. Touch wood. Over the summer though, yeah, it did go quite quiet, but I've always had enough to kind of get by off. I'm lucky I've got savings, so it's been okay. But I do have friends who are more based only within travel blogging and less within food, and I know they found it a real struggle.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I've got food home and abroad, so we've always got content. And I think we're all, you know, this is a learning curve for everyone. You know, I think we're all focused on how it's going right now. I think as it drags on and on, really it's then to start trying to look to the future and see how to create content that's varied and perhaps, as we said before, you know, working together with the destination in clever ways.
Yeah, more innovative ways and collaborations.
Yeah, you could have a group of influencers together, for instance. So, and say everyone cook a dish from that country, for instance, and do it like that. So you have an online Greek feast or something, you know. So everyone brings something to the table, and then I don't know, some chefs or some home cooks, etc., from the country get involved. You learn some of the words that you and traditions around that table that might happen. There's all sorts of things you could do, especially around Christmas, actually, isn't there?
That's true.
There's different festive traditions in different countries.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is a great question. What is your favorite part of your work, Sally?
Eating. I think it is the diversity. I mean, I love food styling and food photography, but I am a bit of a geek. You know, especially when I'm traveling, I do like digging deep. So someone gave me a jar of ghee the other day, and again, I've lived in the Middle East a long time, and especially in Dubai, there's ghee everywhere. It's in food, you know, there's a big Indian expat community. But I tasted this ghee and I couldn't believe it. It was absolutely stunning. And then I suddenly realized what everyone was talking about ghee. So I got in touch with lots and lots of people I knew who'd grown up with ghee, and they will tell me their stories. And I did it just because I wanted to know more about ghee. But then it gave this beautiful story and lots of memories around food stuff. And that's what makes me tick. And I had a really good response from it. So, just going down rabbit holes of food-focused stories. Yeah,
derived from your
my
own
favourite bit.
curiosity.
Yeah, curiosity. Yeah, that's my favourite bit.
Great. Kacie?
For me, there's no denying that the food is a real highlight. But one of the things that I love the most about my job is getting to meet different people around the world with different outlooks on life. And I think there's just nothing better to do sometimes when you're in a new destination than just stroll through the streets with nowhere in particular to go, just following, like wherever life takes you, and just seeing who you meet along the way. And that's one of the reasons I love the Caribbean, is because everybody you meet on the way just wants to chat. So meeting the local people and just immersing yourself with the locals is one of my favorite things. Yeah,
definitely. Oh, you're making me really miss traveling right now. The best parts of traveling. All right, one last question and then we'll wrap up. What was your best food tourism experience ever? Hard question. Yeah, this is a hard question. Wow. I don't think I could answer mine, but maybe you can think of one of your top food experiences or one of your most memorable.
One of my most memorable was when I was at Belmont Estate in Grenada, and we were having a tour of the cacao farm, and we were getting to be cacao farmers for the day, and we saw one of the cacao pods just kind of cut open, hacked in front of us right there and then for the very first time, and seeing those pearly, pulpy, slimy little buds inside, and the beans, and just tasting them and the bittersweet taste, and my first encounter with the cacao pod. So,
Amazing. Sounds really fun. Sally?
Yeah, there's been highlights for every single trip I've been on. So it's really, I can't say this is a favorite, but one of the most memorable was visiting Georgia, not Georgia in the US, Georgia, the country. Mm-hmm. And they are the longest continual wine producers in the world. And they make natural wines, but they have such a culture around wine. It's even in their the story of how Georgia came into being, and they make 40 different types of cheese bread, and eating with the Georgians is something that's an amazing experience. Everyone stands up and says their bit and sings out loud, and you always have a party with Georgians, and it really it shed light on the country, and I've been back 3 times and I would love to go. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, that's been added officially to my bucket list as well.
Definitely.
Well, thank you very much, Sally and Kacie. Just wrapping up, what would be, I want you to share the best way to get in touch with you if people would like to follow up on anything, and also your top call to action recommendation to our viewers. So Sally?
So you can get in touch with me everywhere, my Custard Pie, all one word, on my blog, on Twitter, on Instagram, YouTube. You can find me online as my Custard Pie. And sorry, what was the second part? I've forgotten already.
Call to action. Call to action for our viewers.
Call to action, that's right. For how you can work with influencers, is that what you're saying? Yeah. Just do your research. That's what I'd say. Follow people, really get to know them.
Sure. Perfect. Kacie?
That's it.
So if anyone would like to get in touch with me, you can find the blog at therarewelshbit.com, and my email address is Kacie, that's KACIE, at therarewelshbit.com, and I'm also at therarewelshbit on all of my social media channels. And my one takeaway for anyone listening tonight would be to develop almost like a talent pool of bloggers who you'd like to explore working with, whether you've got the budget or not. I think don't let budget concerns limit you. See what you can develop, and look to develop long-term relationships over time rather than rushing in and offering budget for a big trip. Put your feelers out there and really get to know people and invest in your relationships.
Sure. If we've learned anything, it's that bloggers it's about community, it's about building trust, it's about being genuine and being authentic. So I think that anyone who works with a blogger to any capacity, you have to have those at the forefront of your mind.
Definitely.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Sally and Kacie. We really appreciated your insight on this topic, and I will be following along your blogs to see, hopefully, when your next adventures will come.
Well, thank you, and it's been really great to connect with your audience as well, because yeah, a real privilege. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. It's been great. Thanks.
Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. Take care, everyone. Be safe.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.